right, so this is your time to ask me some questions and get some clarifications as you need to. So eager to help however I can. My name is Kim Cobb, by the way. I'm sure you guys hopefully saw me on some of the orientation videos. And I'm very, very enthusiastic about this summer's carbon reduction challenge. And it's super unique, very timely. And I hope, something that your organizations embrace as part of their strategic goals in terms of kind of bouncing back from this pandemic in some ways stronger than they were before, at least in this specific way, hopefully. So thank you for your work in advance, and I'm super excited about the enthusiasm that we've seen from the cohort that we have this summer, and I'm eager to assist however I can. As you know, I'm a climate scientist and a carbon obsessive. I don't think that's like a former job title, but if it were, I would have it. So yeah, I'm here to answer any and all questions you have about the CRC, and cognizant that this is the first time we're doing a COVID-19 related carbon reduction challenge. So, some of your questions will really help guide us to further and better assist the students this summer and in future challenges as well. That's it. Questions, comments?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I have a quick question. First, I just wanted to say hi. I'm Ari. I am really, really excited to be participating in this challenge. I heard about it from Professor Saikawa at Emory, who told me to say hi to you if I ever met you. And so I have an issue. I'm working at kind of like office/lab that produce natural pharmaceuticals. So they produce pharmaceuticals and drugs based off of natural medicine. I'm sorry for the noise. There's construction in the apartment below me. Okay. So a lot of the operations where I'm working happen in the lab or, am I stuck? Am I frozen?
No, we can hear you fine. You may need to turn off your video to preserve bandwidth, but we're still hearing you fine.
I think I'll do that, yes.
Okay.
So a lot of the operations occur in the lab or in storage or in production and shipping, but due to COVID-19, I'm restricted, and the only area that I am able to be in physically is the administrative area. So I really can't. I'd love to walk around and go see how the operations are happening and where there would be areas to change behaviors to reduce their carbon emissions, but I'm not able to do this. Do you have any ideas, or is there anything that you suggest?
Sure. So I think that's going to be the case for lots of people, as some of you may even be working fully remotely for your summer's work. And so I think it's important to recognize that you can collect feedback and input from different corners of your company, especially where you think there may be high impact potentials there, or impacts that are specific and profound during this pandemic that you'd like to assess on behalf of your organization, and then make that strategic recommendation for things they might consider as part of permanent operations. So I think that in no way precludes you from gathering those insights, from working with those teammates that you have, even if they're 100% virtually, to work through this design process, this gathering and design process. So you by no means have to make a physical based intervention. In fact, in years past with the CRC, it's almost never about a physically based intervention anyway. It's usually a change in practice or a change in process that is quite removed from the specific units that the students are even sitting in. So that's just about assessing the landscape for impact at your organization and focusing your efforts, right? But you don't have to be in there changing light bulbs or changing thermostats yourself, or even have direct access to somebody who can. This is about building a collaborative framework around a potential high impact solution. And that takes time as well. It doesn't happen overnight, and you're not expected to design that connectivity and that collaborative relationship overnight either. We're actually in a gathering mode right now. That's what the pre-survey is about. It's going to be followed up by an in-depth survey to help further refine our understanding of that potential and some of the stakeholders at play. And we'll be supporting you along the way. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, a lot.
Hi, Professor. Just want to first, say thanks for having this office hour and clarifying everything. Very excited to.
I don't know if I'll clarify everything, but I will do my best to clarify some things. How's that?
I mean, hopefully everything, I guess. Right.
I'm
So,
with you.
right. So I have a question that's sort of related to the last question, I guess. So I'm currently interning at an insurance company. And the thing is, so I'm in their data analytics team, and I have communicated with my hiring manager about this project, and she had given me permission to sort of just circulate the survey within our team. And I understand that there was a sample size question, I think, in the last Q&A video, and I think about like there's like a link or a website online that sort of tells you what kind of sample size would be a good choice for your company. However, I was just wondering like if since there seems to be a lot more barriers around like I think bigger corporations and I might not be able to get my surveys out to as many people as I want. And I was wondering like if that might be a problem and maybe I need to reach out to my hiring manager and discuss about like potentially reaching out outside of the team that I'm currently in and having more responses.
So that's a really good question. I think a lot of people are going to come up against this, and we kind of have to respect the fact that you just started in these positions for the most part, and you're still in relationship building mode, and you're not going to have access to the entire organization at your whim. That's anti-gravity, and so we're not absolutely not expecting that. And I think what we are trying to do here is use the people that are in your immediate vicinity to try to get as much information as we can about some of the operations or processes that have been impacted by the pandemic. And then maybe through that process, you can have some insights into potentially, whether that scales linearly across the rest of the company or whether there are reasons to believe, for whatever reason, that does not scale, that's more confined to your team. And so this is always an issue, again, with every carbon reduction challenge that we come up against when we think about interventions that students may see as within their own team. And what are the assumptions for how that might scale? And so this scaling issue is something that we'll be kind of chewing on over the course of the semester. Now, there are different roads to access higher levels of the company with larger constituencies at play and a set of recommendations that might be aimed at company-wide policies or practice. That's at the end of the summer, though, and you have to build that capital, you have to build those relationships, and you have to make data-driven arguments, and those hopefully include cost. And so as you're able to articulate these arguments and support them with calculations, you may gain access to different higher level groups, larger teams that may be adjacent to your own. But that is a process that we can't leapfrog and we can't short circuit. That is why we build this like we are, purposefully starting small and mindfully learning as much as we can, and then kind of purposely designing what are those next critical steps to help us reach the next stage. And my co-lead Beryl Toktai is an expert in business institutions and organizational structures and hierarchies that can really help inform that. And through our 10 years of experience running this program, we also have our own levels of understanding about what that might be. But please rest assured, folks that are on this call, that it's not about the biggest carbon savings by the end of the summer. It's not about whether you got sign off from the CEO of something that you proposed. It's really not about these kinds of home runs. It's about walking through a process with us that is helping you make your case. You're making it effectively. You're using data well, you are being strategic. You are building relationships at your organization that are enabling you to go forward in achieving your goals, even if those goals are relatively modest. This is not about size. This is about process and running a good process and being respectful of everybody around us, you, your organization, your teammates, and the CRC team.
So related to that, this is Kanisha, by the
Lalith,
way.
do you want to? I saw Lalith try to chime in there. Lalith.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. Hi, everyone. My name is Lalith, and I work with Professor Cobb on the Carbon Reduction Challenge this semester.
Your
And
beard's getting longer and longer, Lalith.
it's I'm trying a new look with working remotely because I don't interact with that many people anyway. So this is a good time to experiment with the new look. Looking forward to your feedback at the end of the semester, everyone who's on the call. So I just wanted to kind of.
It's not the size of the beard, it's the process, Lalith.
Yeah, it's the process of yeah, for sure. I just wanted to kind of add two more things to the question on pre-survey, just to add to what Dr. Cobb just mentioned, that it's very important to focus on relationships and process. For the pre-survey, especially for those of you working at larger companies, it's definitely more important to send the survey to your immediate team so that you can talk to those people in more detail. The focus of the pre-survey is really to sort of get a broad sense of what are the behaviors or operations that have changed the most. So if you send your survey to your team, you have a higher likelihood of being able to follow up with that one person or those three people who had sort of an interesting comment that you want to get more information on. So that's kind of part one. And then part two, when you send out that in-depth survey, that second survey later on, it would be great if the same people or most of the same people who took your pre-survey can take that in-depth survey as well, so you can dive deeper on their comments. So that's kind of the first part. And then the second part is regarding representative sample size. In our Q&A, we put that as more of a guideline, definitely not a requirement. And for those of you working at larger companies, it's going to be very difficult to get, if you're working at a company that has like thousands of people, it's not going to work to get that many people to respond to your survey. We totally understand that. In that case, a representative sample would possibly be your team and maybe one other team who you have access to through your supervisor or fellow teammates, so that you can not maybe just bring out the bias of one team that may be really strongly sustainability focused just by the nature of your involvement with them, but you can be more representative. So that's kind of all with that, and we can certainly, if you have more questions, just let us know at carbonreduction@godtech.edu, and we will definitely say more. That's all I had to say.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to say that, I know every organization has its structures, and those are based on teams and working groups, et cetera. But your supervisor may have some close individual friends located in different units across the company, and they might be willing to spend that tiny bit of capital to tap them on the shoulder and say, can you just take this survey for my intern this summer? I think it's a cool thing. And so that's not about, asking another supervisor to burn their capital across their entire team when they may not understand exactly what this is all about and they don't have time to figure it out. But using those privileged relationships, even if it's just two people additional, Lalith is right, that additional perspective is uniquely valuable at this time. That's another way forward. Thanks, Lalith.
Well, thank you guys for the answers. I think that helped a lot.
Great. You could raise your hand in chat, and I can just call on you if you want, or chime in. I know nobody wants to interrupt each other, so kind of get this awkward thing.
Hi, I'm Neha. I just had a quick question regarding kind of flexibility of schedule. I know in the last Q&A video, you guys said that the schedule can be flexible, but I had a very late start to my internship. I just started yesterday.
Okay.
And this whole first week is just going to be training. So I've basically only met other interns, and I haven't met my team yet.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, when's kind of the latest I can send out that pre-survey?
There is no too late to be useful in this process. I think you can just slide your schedule and adjust accordingly with the rest. So that would be in week 2, maybe by the end of next week, if this is all orientation, maybe you can start to have this conversation with your supervisor whenever you can, and to try to work towards a shared understanding of when that pre-survey might be able to go out, knowing that the sooner the better. But from our perspective, we are almost infinitely accommodating of your situation, because of course we would love you to continue to be part of the program and to have an option to work through this process. I don't think you're severely compromised in any way. I think if we're having this conversation in a month, I think it's way too late. So sometime between, wow, could you just try to be a bit aggressive? And if we don't have something really moving forward with an in-depth survey that's well on its way in a month's time, we're going to be having to recognize that we're not going to have a meaningful experience for you, and really very little benefit for your organization potentially. Lala, do you have another point of wisdom on that?
Nothing to add. Neha, thanks for letting us know that you started your internship yesterday. I just made a note of that in our sheet so that when sort of recommended due dates come around, we'll know that we can expect yours about 2 weeks later. And that applies to everyone else too. If you have any adjustments in your internship, we know that the summer internships have changed a lot, are fluid, right? So we definitely want to be flexible to you guys. So I just made a note of that, Neha. Thanks for letting us know. And then the same applies to everyone else.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Adriana. Thank you guys for organizing this summer. I know Lala just mentioned previously that we can follow up with people who have maybe interesting comments if in the survey, but the survey is anonymous. So how are we supposed to identify like who those people are that we could maybe talk to about more in depth about their response to the survey?
I can take that one if that would be okay. Yeah, so the survey is anonymous to recommend to recommend honest answers. But I believe at the bottom of the last page, there is an optional email and name field that people can fill out. So yeah, hopefully people fill that out so that you can follow up with them. That's kind of option 1. Option 2 is if you have a larger team and you want to be able to follow up with people, you can actually edit your own pre-survey to make that question required so that people respond to that, and you can follow up with them directly. So I don't have a great answer for you on that, other than making sure that people volunteer or encouraging people to volunteer to associate their email with their responses. But you also have full flexibility over your pre-survey to change that to what you would like.
Got it. Thank you.
And I think it's also important to say that a lot of this organizational wisdom and observations that have gone on that you're going to be hearing about from the people who are taking the survey, you may get a lot more clarity in a follow-up conversation with almost any member of that team as it regards, what is this about, or can you help me understand this a bit better? Because it's probably not unique to that team member. And maybe something that they could speak to in terms of why that piece is the way it is. So I think there are also some room for follow-up, obviously in-depth understandings with almost random interviews as well.
Thank you.
Something in the chat, Zoe from Agnes Scott, I'm asking these questions on behalf of our research director. Can we add our organization logo to the email template and survey alongside the GT logo? Absolutely yes. If your organization is keen on that, we're very keen on that. Clarification on zip codes. Are we asking for home or school zip codes? Oh, if you're like working with students, you mean? I'm not really sure about that.
Yeah, we're asking for home zip codes on that so that we can at least get a sense of how far people need to commute. So
I see, the commuting one, yeah.
Yeah, so Zoe, if you'd like to add home zip code or modify your pre-survey to do that, or if you have any issues doing that, I know since you're Agnes Scott, if you have any issues with the Qualtrics parts email us and we'll help you fix that.
Okay, and what do you mean by a few times a year? Is this specifically asking for a certain time of year, such as fall or spring of the school year?
I can take that one as well. So in the pre-survey, we ask for how often you use certain modes of transportation, and those range from, say, a few times a year all the way to a few times a week or several times a week. So, for example, if you were commuting to work, you would probably do multiple times a week by car. So let me back up. If you travel by car to work, you will probably select you travel by car multiple times a week. But if you only fly maybe once a quarter or once a semester for work, then you would probably select a few times a year for under that plain transportation category. So a few times a year does not refer to a specific time of year, it just more refers to an estimate of how frequently you use each mode of transportation, so we can get a sense of rank and frequency. So if you're, and this will change by organization. If you are in an organization that has a lot of where consultancy makes up a core part of the business, then maybe flying per year is more frequent than a local small business where traveling where walking to work or traveling by car is more frequent. So we're just trying to get sort of the landscape of different transportation options there. Hope that helps, Zoe. And if there's any other follow-up questions, just let us know in the chat. Happy to follow up on that.
I have a quick follow-up question.
Oh, yeah, follow-up. Go ahead, please.
So I am working out of Guatemala and we don't really use zip codes here. So I removed that question from my survey because I think most people won't know what their zip code is. But now that I know what it's for, could I edit it and just like ask what distance they travel to work? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, thank you.
The reason we're asking that question is so that we can so that you have information to do a calculation from mileage to pounds of carbon dioxide that have been emitted. And we'll show you how to do that as the summer goes on. But that's that's the reason that we asked that question. So feel free to ask mileage to work, because that'll be sort of a similar, that'll give a similar type of data. And in general, feel free to edit the pre-survey. We're using this as we treat this more of as a template that you can build on. We expect that the pre-survey will roughly be the same for most of you at this stage of the carbon reduction challenge. But once we get into the in-depth survey, that second survey that we will send out in July, it will be much more customized to your company, and we will need to work with each of you to customize it for your specific organization. So yeah, in general, feel free to change the pre-survey and build on it.
Hi, I had a question. Also, following what everyone else said, thank you for, putting this program together. I'm super excited for it. So my name is Anthony. I am working at HubSpot. It's a mid-sized technology company based up in Boston, but it has locations around the globe. And I'm actually in a pretty favorable position for this challenge within this company because I'm a return intern there. And the people in this company are generally like really progressive and want to see environmental progress, social progress. So I imagine, this kind of program is something that they would buy into pretty well. We also have a wiki system where anyone can post articles, and it's very common for, people at all levels of the company to be reading articles there. So I was thinking for my specific case, I'd like to kind of like make a wiki article and then have the pre-survey and then eventually the in-depth survey there. And I was just wondering if you had any ideas of like what would be useful information or graphics or videos to include alongside that pre-survey to kind of help with like the rallying call, because I think in that format, I'll be able to get a lot of attention towards this. And I think where I'll probably have the most luck is like a cultural push. So I would just like to kind of like make sure that that's as strong as possible. So I want to get some of your insight on that.
Yeah, so thanks for the great question. And it sounds like you have an amazing opportunity in front of you. And not only are you a returning intern, which means you have relationships that you can leverage already, but you have this organizational affinity, which is also a very, very good part of the recipe. So, kind of working with the choir, it sounds like here. So we have
Yeah.
posted some resources that we thought might provide some really great framing for helping people to understand how the pandemic has impacted climate progress and some of the emissions reductions to date. And so I think you might find some of those of use. They are very short reads in general, kind of news related features that are small time investment. If you would like something more in depth, I think we can take it to the team and think about, what would be the next set of resources that we might be able to provide the CRC students this summer in helping to put that even into a better context about the climate crisis and what needs to happen, to get us to carbon neutrality. So that's an offer, but I think maybe if you want to get back to us on whether you think that's the resources we provided are enough for your purposes, and we'll try to support you as you go. But I'll also invite Lalith to layer up on that.
Yep. If you have a look at the carbonreductionchallenge.org website, two resources to kind of to look at would be the sample email that we suggest to send out to your team members. Perhaps you could build on. We try in that sample email, we try to lay out the context for why we are doing the carbon reduction challenge this way for the summer, keeping in mind the pandemic and how that's changing business operations. So feel free to take content from that and add it to your article that you would post on the wiki. The second resource is the How It Works section of the Carbon Reduction Challenge website. Feel free to sort of take content from there and repurpose it for your needs. And then the last resource, I think, would be any of the orientation videos, actually, that we put up. You can even link to specific segments of that video if you want people to sort of if you want to highlight how the pandemic and climate are so closely linked. So I guess I'd recommend starting with those specific three resources. But yeah, as Dr. Cobb said, if you need something more, just let us know and we're happy to get that over to you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
And we have a question in the chat from Rahul. Is this going to be a team effort or an individual one? Was just wondering if we could team up with others in the same company participating in the CRC, not sure if they are, so that we can club the survey results together. Thanks. Yes. So, historically, the CRC has been a mixture of student teams that are working together, usually within a single organization, and they are able to get pretty far because sometimes they're sitting in different units, and so they can leverage that scale factor faster. But also because they have complementary skill sets to each other. So some of them might be, a CS major, another one might be a communications specialist, et cetera. And so, banding together student interests and skills can be very successful in terms of building a project and being impactful. So yeah, I think if any of you would like to think about how you might identify fellow Georgia Tech students or even other interested interns who you may be meeting. For example, I remember one of the students just now saying they're in the intern orientation program, socializing the concept that you're working on this project, that it's open to anybody to joining up in a team-based format, whether those are Georgia Tech students who have already been part of the CRC, unlikely, but anybody can join to make a team, and that there are really key benefits for yourselves as forming a team that could build its own community, its own social structure for you in a time that is kind of lacking in many virtual platforms. That's a great way to come together around a concrete cross-unit, perhaps, workflow. And so, yeah, then you could make the argument that the prizes at the end are quite significant, and history would show that it doesn't take a team to win, but many teams have won. So there's room for everybody. We've had single student winners as well as team winners. I don't think it's quite 50-50, mostly teams, but yeah, that's all I would say on that subject. Lalith?
As an admin note on that, if you do decide to team up with other interns at your company, just let us know by sending their names and emails. And also, please get supervisor approval. So if those interns have other supervisors that are different than yours, it's important that they run the CRC by their supervisor to make sure that everyone's okay with them participating. So just a quick admin note on top, kind of the same process that you guys went through at the beginning would apply to them as well. As you guys know, it's very quick to do that, but it's an important step to make sure that the organization is aware and supportive of your work.
Thanks, Lala.
Looks like we have a question in chat. Would it be possible to team up with interns from other schools?
Who are also at your organization, I'm assuming? Yes, absolutely. So again, there's no bounds of any kind on what could constitute a team for you. So go for it. I said, just keeping in mind what Lala just said about making sure that there's awareness for that student supervisor that they are interested in participating and that you will be working together on this. I think that would be great. And we need to know that as well for communication purposes and keeping them fully in the loop. And I have to say, thanks for these great questions. These really are going to help us build a more useful and straightforward and accessible framework for everybody as we go forward. Other questions, y'all? So I will take the liberty to blab on while you guys think about if you have any other questions, because I love blabbing on. But I hope that you guys might be inspired by my reporting to you that there has been a very large amount of interest in this cohort of the Carbon Reduction Challenge, in part because it is almost entirely virtual, and we've been virtual as a program for years now because we work with people all over everywhere and we basically don't see you apart from the poster session at the end, which is now going to be some kind of virtual event as well. So we're fully transitioning. So there's interest in that mechanically, but more to the point, there's a lot of interest in what you guys are doing and the story that can be told about how students are taking what is ostensibly, such a crisis and thinking about how we can solidify some of the institutional learning that has gone on and change that has gone on to be strategic about what goes forward after this pandemic. And so, the CRC has always been attractive to folks because of its kind of the really exciting combination of students who are out there interacting with real organizational entities, really advocating for a project that they have designed themselves. And now we have this an interesting landscape of the pandemic and institutional change, which is now has taken on a whole new meaning. The definition of institutional change, I think, will forever be different after the pandemic, right? What can be accomplished essentially overnight and what lessons we can take from this, I think, are very lasting and very profound. So a lot of media interest, a lot of other faculty interest from across the country in this particular cohort that you all are participating in. And I know that on the CRC side, we are just happy that we could offer this opportunity and so excited to support you as you work through this process and to make it as high value and impactful for you as students is one of our very, 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 very top goals. Saving the planet's important, but providing a really good experience for you is just as important to us. So thank you for that. And we are here on that email that you guys may be a little loath to use it. We learn from every question that you ask, and we can help the rest of the cohort be more successful and have a better experience. So yeah, keep in touch is, I guess, the bottom line. And please know that we are here to support you. We are super excited about your work. And I feel very, very confident that not only will this be one of the most successful cohorts we've ever had in terms of achieving our shared goals of emissions reductions and hopefully revenue savings for your organizations, but that we really will have expanded our community into a whole new group of students that are going out there to be stewards of this kind of structural change, this kind of institutional change, which will be ingrained in you forever as what's truly possible and what one person or a couple people can accomplish when they set their mind to it. So that's all me blabbing on, and I'm famous for that. But and now you get a taste of how awfully wordy I can be. But I'm very excited. That's the bottom line. I'm very excited. So any other questions in the chat, or y'all want to raise your hand and chime in here before we move to close here? This isn't the last opportunity by any means, of course, either.
I guess I have one last quick question. I'm sorry. I'm always that person that asks too many questions.
Yeah, there is never such a thing.
So I was emailing one of you, I forget right now who it was, but I said that most of the people at the organization I'm working at don't have really an understanding of what climate change or carbon emissions are. So yeah. I'm developing like a short educational program about like what it is and how it affects them directly. But I was wondering, for the in-depth survey, how much of an understanding do they have to have? Because I really didn't want to go too much into it because I don't want to confuse them. So I was just talking like very on the surface about just in general climate change and emissions. But yes, I guess how much understanding is necessary for the surveys?
Very little, very little. So, we are interested in their data that they know as experts, in fact. We are not interested in making them experts on climate change. That's not our goal here. So we're recognizing their expertise in how their daily lives have changed, how the company has changed, and that's the expertise that we are tapping. So it's actually quite the reverse. We're learning from them here. Now, if you feel that you're going to get better engagement if they understand some of the broader context for CO2 emissions, I'm with you. I think that's probably true. But that's something again that you can build over time. You do not have to build that overnight, and you don't have to deliver that to get that pre-survey information, that data that you need to get started. And so what we found in previous cohorts of the Carbon Reduction Challenge is this feedback loop, this growing feedback loop between engagement and awareness and literacy on these topics, building significantly over the course of the semester, both on the side of the student. Of course, you're in a very active learning mode, right? You're learning from all corners of this process right now, whether you realize it or not. And then the organization and the stakeholders are learning as well and coming to a greater awareness of what this issue is and what the scope of the challenges are and their potential role in being part of the solution. And that's what your feedback loops are hopefully designed to help them understand. I mean, when we build a set of recommendations towards the end of the summer, we will be building in those explicitly into a broader context and placing those emissions into a broader context. So everybody will become very emissions literate by the end of the summer. So you don't have to feel the burden of accomplishing that right now. I think it's amazing that you are interested in helping them at this point maybe get that first toehold into why you're even bothering with this and why the company may be interested in allowing you some latitude to explore this. And if you feel like that's a barrier, then indeed, I think you're right. You probably do need to take some first steps. But I think Lalith can probably point you to some great resources that might help you. And I remember you saying that, of course, the language barrier may be a big issue in your workplace, but there are many Spanish-speaking resources as well that I think I could reach out to several of my colleagues in the international community and find some that might be quite ready-made as well. And so maybe Lalith can put that on my action list. But Lalith, do you have anything else to add here?
Nothing more as to how you can update your course of action. But if you do create something, we would love to take a look at it. The materials that you create, we would love to take a look. So if you could share that with us, we would love to look it over. And then second, then this applies to all of you. If there are resources that you would like to see from us in our weekly emails, just let us know, and we're happy to add those in. We kind of want to be respectful of your time because you're taking this on in addition to your internship and co-op. But we also want to make this a useful summer where you learn more about how climate sustainable business and your work are tightly connected. So if you have suggestions or ideas for what we can include in our weekly emails, we'd love to hear it. But yeah, that's all I had to add on that one. I think you're muted.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks. I am famous for that too. I was going to add, I just dropped in chat the name of one of my colleagues who co-taught a climate course with me this last spring at Georgia Tech, Dr. Jairo Garcia, and he is one of the co-leads for the Climate Reality chapter in Atlanta. And he probably has some resources at his fingertips, and may even be able to have a short video he could kind of co-create with you that might be very useful and impactful in terms of delivering Spanish-speaking content to your teammates.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And it was just like very basic understanding, because when I initially sent the survey to my supervisor, she told me that most of the employees don't know what emissions are. So it was just like very like simple and superficial, but I will definitely reach out. Thank you.
I had one more quick question. Just on the level like my company is on right now is a lot of them are kind of phasing back and starting to come back to work. And on the pre-survey, it's kind of asking, like how transportation has been affected like before and after COVID. So should I be taking, like, just for their clarification, their responses about, like what they're doing like right now as they're taking the survey, or like in the like future, like coming months when they're phasing back?
I think the idea is to capture the extremes that may have really been the peak of the change. And so you might need to clarify that if there is a phased back to work plan. I know Georgia Tech is doing that right now as well. And then the idea, of course, going forward is to try to understand, if that was if the floor fell out of particular processes and practices at the company, what makes sense to come full back, what makes sense to come 70, 80% back, and what are the costs and benefits of wherever you would recommend that set point be, but where the floor is defined as the full maximum impact of the pandemic on the organization. That's, I think, the purpose of the survey. Lalith, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, the purpose of the survey, the purpose of the pre-survey is to understand behaviors before the pandemic and during the pandemic, during those two extremes. What we're trying to understand this summer, or hopefully make the case for, is that emissions need not go back to the way they were. Like, I think that's an implicit assumption that several organizations may have without articulating it, but there's really no need for emissions to bounce back to exactly the way they were pre-pandemic. We've all been able to work successfully, for the most part, for the last several months. So we're trying to understand through these surveys whether there are behaviors, whether there are these low carbon behaviors that we can continue beyond the pandemic. I imagine that the case at your organization will be similar for several other organizations too, that people are starting to ramp up and we're starting to reopen. For the pre-survey, I think it would be good to focus on before and during the pandemic. In the in-depth survey, we'll add a few questions on how things are going right now, so we can see whether that chart whether that sort of emissions graph, it would go like drop, and then is it creeping back up to normal, or is it drop and maybe reaching a new normal that is lower? That's what we'd like to see and hopefully make the case for the organization. But in the pre-survey where we are right now, let's focus on before and during the pandemic.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And I think it's we're not talking about in this process advocating for the continuation of pandemic-like mode, or even a 50% ramp up mode on operations or practices or processes. There are still many aspects of business life which are deeply impacted by the restrictions that remain in place around, for example, travel and in-person interactions, et cetera. So, our goal in working through this process is to try to identify where that cost-benefit tipping point may be, and try to understand, where the benefits outweigh the costs. And it's not just financial. I want to make that point really clearly. We talk about this a lot in the Carbon Reduction Challenge. You're going to hear a lot about this concept of co-benefits. This is a big topic in all of climate change as well, climate change mitigation in particular. We talk about, the benefits of perhaps allowing more employees to work virtually, right? And we see the carbon benefits of that. We can quantify them. They're absolutely concrete. They can be measured. The costs as well, to the employee who doesn't have to pay gas or may be able to get rid of their car in some cases, right? All into the company that has to provide parking, perhaps in a high real estate value location as a perk to so many employees. So these are like tangible costs, carbon and costs. But then some of the co-benefit spaces are things that you can't quantify in terms of numbers, like employee satisfaction, accessibility to a job that would require in-person if it doesn't anymore. People who are parenting small children may find greater flexibility and be drawn to that organization at greater numbers with a higher talent base to tap for that position. Greater loyalty for people that feel their company is accommodating their particular lifestyle desires and needs. So these are kind of how do you can't quantify that, but companies do value that. And so part of our work with the in-depth survey will be to try to flesh out some of those co-benefit spaces and to help you make the case beyond the carbon and cost. But certainly carbon costs and co-benefits are the three pieces that we always think about when we think about building a case explicitly. So please keep that in mind. This is not just a straight cost calculation. These co-benefits weigh heavily on the minds of decision makers and leaders within organizations. They care a lot about these things. Oh, and the branding and marketing of being a champion for low carbon practices in this era cannot be overstated, of course, and that's not quantifiable either. Good questions. This is a rich space. I love the ability to unpack some of this with you guys. Wish we had all of the participants on the line, but I know we are recording, so hopefully they will get the benefit of these corners we are poking into and rocks we are turning over as we look ahead. All right, y'all. Going once. Going twice. All right, Lalith, are we about ready to wrap, do you think?
Yeah, if you have any more questions, just let us know at carbonreduction@gautech.edu. I'll drop that in the chat as well. But thank you all for spending your lunch hour with us today. We appreciate you taking time out of your day and talking with us about the Carbon Reduction Challenge. But if there aren't any more questions today, I think we'll close and we'll see you next time. We'll have the next office hours around the time that your report for the pre-survey is due. We're trying to kind of position these at points where you might have the most questions. So after the pre-survey data is in and you're starting to write up your report, summarizing that, we'll hold our next office hours. We're still scheduling the exact date for that, but we will let you know soon. But thank you so much for your time today, guys.
Bye, good luck. Have fun, stay safe. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.